King William's War was the North American theater of the 9 Years' War. It was the first of 6 colonial wars fought between New France and New England along with their respective native allies before France ceded its remaining mainland territories in North America east of the Mississippi River in 1763. For King William's War, neither England nor France thought of weakening their position in Europe to support the war effort in North America. New France and the Wabanaki Confederacy were able to thwart New England expansion into Acadia, whose border New France defined as the Kennebec River in southern Maine. According to the terms of the Treaty of Ryswick, the boundaries and outposts of New France, New England, and New York remained substantially unchanged. North America at the end of the 17th century. The English settlers were more than 154,000 at the beginning of the war, outnumbering the French 12 to 1. However, they were divided in multiple colonies along the Atlantic coast, which were unable to cooperate efficiently, and they were engulfed in the Glorious Revolution, creating tension among the colonists. In addition, the English lacked military leadership and had a difficult relationship with their Iroquois allies. New France was divided in 3 entities: Acadia on the Atlantic coast, Canada along the St. Lawrence River and up to the Great Lakes, and Louisiana from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Along the Mississippi River, the French population amounted to 14,000 in 1689. Although the French were vastly outnumbered, they were more politically unified and contained a disproportionate number of adult males with military backgrounds. Realizing their numerical inferiority, they developed good relationships with the Indians in order to multiply their forces and made effective use of hit-and-run tactics. Causes of the war. William joined the League of Augsburg in its war against France, where James had fled. In North America, there was significant tension between New France and the northern English colonies, which had in 1686 been united in the Dominion of New England. New England and the Iroquois Confederacy fought New France and the Wabanaki Confederacy. The Iroquois dominated the economically important Great Lakes fur trade and had been in conflict with New France since 1680. At the urging of New England, the Iroquois interrupted the trade between New France and the western tribes. In retaliation, New France raided Seneca lands of western New York. In turn, New England supported the Iroquois in attacking New France, which they did by raiding La Chine. There were similar tensions on the border between New England and Acadia, which New France defined as the Kennebec River in southern Maine. English settlers from Massachusetts had expanded their settlements into Acadia. To secure New France's claim to present-day Maine, New France established Catholic missions among the 3 largest native villages in the region. One on the Kennebec River, one further north on the Penobscot River and one on the St. John River. For their part, in response to King Philip's War, the 5 Indian tribes in the region of Acadia created the Wabanaki Confederacy to form a political and military alliance with New France to stop the New England expansion. War. New England, Acadia and Newfoundland Theatre. The New England, Acadia and Newfoundland Theatre of the War is also known as Castin's War and Father Jean Baudoin's War. In April 1688, Governor Andros plundered Castin's home and village on Penobscot Bay. Later in August, the English raided the French village of Chedabuctue. In response, Castin and the Wabanaki Confederacy engaged in the Northeast Coast Campaign of 1688 along the New England-Acadia border. They began August 13, 1688 at New Dartmouth, killing a few settlers. A few days later they killed 2 people at Yarmouth in the first battle. At Kennebunk, in the fall of 1688, members of the Confederacy killed 2 families. The following spring, in June 1689, several hundred Abenaki and Pennacook Indians under the command of Kankamagus and Mezandowit raided Dover, New Hampshire, killing more than 20 and taking 29 captives, who were sold into captivity in New France. In June, they killed 4 men at Saco. In response to these raids, a company of 24 men were raised to search for the bodies and pursue the natives. They were forced to return after they lost a quarter of their men in conflicts with the natives. In August 1689, Jean-Vincent de Bardi de Saint-Castin and Father Louis-Pierre Thury led an Abenaki war party that captured and destroyed the fort at Pemaquid. The fall of Pemaquid was a significant setback to the English. It pushed the frontier back to Casco, Maine. New England retaliated for these raids by sending Major Benjamin Church to raid Acadia. During King William's War, Church led 4 New England raiding parties into Acadia against the Acadians and members of the Wabanaki Confederacy. On the first expedition into Acadia, on September 21, 1689, Church and 250 troops defended a group of English settlers trying to establish themselves at Falmouth. The tribes of the Wabanaki Confederacy killed 21 of his men, but Church's defense was successful and the natives retreated. Church then returned to Boston, leaving the small group of English settlers unprotected. The following spring, over 400 French and native troops, under the leadership of Castin, destroyed Salmon Falls, then returned to Falmouth and massacred all the English settlers in the Battle of Fort Loyal. When Church returned to the village later that summer, he buried the dead. The fall of Fort Loyal led to the near depopulation of Maine. Native forces were then able to attack New Hampshire frontier without reprisal. Battle of Port Royal. The New Englanders, led by Sir William Fish, retaliated by attacking Port Royal, the capital of Acadia. The Battle of Port Royal began on May 9, 1690. Fish arrived with 736 New England men in 7 English ships. Governor de Meneville fought for 2 days and then capitulated. The garrison was imprisoned in the church, and Governor de Meneville was confined to his house. The New Englanders leveled what was begun of the new fort. The residents of Port Royal were imprisoned in the church and administered an oath of allegiance to the king. Fish left, but warships from New York arrived in June, which resulted in more destruction. The seamen burned and looted the settlement, including the parish church. The New Englanders left again, and Villebon, the governor of Acadia, moved the capital to safer territory inland at Fort Nashwauk. Fort Nashwauk remained the capital until after the war, when Port Royal was restored as the capital in 1699. In Church's second expedition to Acadia, he arrived with 300 men at Casco Bay on the 11th of September 1690. His mission was to relieve the English Fort Pugh-Prescott, which had been taken by the Wabanaki Confederacy. He went up the Androscoggin River to Fort Pugh-Prescott. From there he went 40 miles upriver to Livermore Falls and attacked a native village. Church's men shot 3 or 4 native men when they were retreating. Church discovered 5 English captives in the wigwams. Church butchered 6 or 7 natives and took 9 prisoners. A few days later, in retaliation, the members of the Wabanaki Confederacy attacked Church at Cape Elizabeth on Purpooduck Point, killing 7 of his men and wounding 24 others. On September 26, Church returned to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. During King William's War, when the town of Wells contained about 80 houses and log cabins strung along the post road, it was attacked on June 9, 1691, by about 200 Native Americans commanded by the sachem Moxis. But Captain James Converse and his militia successfully defended Lieutenant Joseph Store's garrison, which was surrounded by a gated palisade. Another sachem, Madikawando, threatened to return the next year and have the dog Converse out of his den. As the natives withdrew, they went to York off Cape Neddick and boarded a vessel, killing most of the crew. They also burned a hamlet. In early 1692, an estimated 150 Abenakis commanded by officers of New France returned to York, killing about 100 of the English settlers and burning down buildings in what would become known as the Candlemas Massacre. Church's third expedition to Acadia during the war was in 1692 when he raided Penobscot with 450 men. Church and his men then went on to raid Taconic. In 1693, New England frigates attacked Port Royal again, burning almost a dozen houses and 3 barns full of grain. On July 18, 1694, French soldier Claude Sébastien de Villiers with about 250 Abenakis from Norwich-Wock under command of their Sagamore Beaumazine raided the English settlement of Durham, New Hampshire, in their Oyster River Massacre. In all, the French and native force killed 45 inhabitants and took 49 captive, burning half the dwellings, including 5 garrisons. They also destroyed crops and killed livestock, causing famine and destitution for the survivors. Siege of Pemaquid in 1696, New France and the tribes of the Wabanaki Confederacy, led by St. Castin and Pierre Le Moyne d'Iberville, returned and fought a naval battle in the Bay of Fundy before moving on to raid Pemaquid, Maine. After the siege of Pemaquid, d'Iberville led a force of 124 Canadians, Acadians, Mi'kmaq and Abenakis in the Avalon Peninsula campaign. They destroyed almost every English settlement in Newfoundland. Over 100 English were killed, many times that number captured, and almost 500 deported to England or France. In retaliation, Church went on his 4th expedition to Acadia and carried out a retaliatory raid against Acadian communities on the Isthmus of Chignecto and Fort Nashwack, which was then the capital of Acadia. Quebec and New York Theatre. Also in August 1689, 1,500 Iroquois, seeking revenge for Governor-General de Nonval's actions, attacked the French settlement at Lachine. Count Frontenac, who replaced Denonville as Governor-General, later attacked the Iroquois village of Onondaga. New France and its Indian allies then attacked English frontier settlements in early 1690, most notably at Schenectady in New York. This was followed up by 2 expeditions. One, on land under Connecticut, provincial militia General Fitzjohn Winthrop targeted Montreal. The other, led by Sir William Fiss, targeted Quebec. Winthrop's expedition failed due to disease and supply issues, and Fiss was defeated in the Battle of Quebec. The Quebec and Port Royal expeditions were the only major New England offensives of King William's War. For the remainder of the war, the English colonists were primarily engaged in defensive operations, skirmishes and retaliatory raids. The Iroquois Five Nations suffered from the weakness of their English allies. In 1693 and 1696, the French and their Indian allies ravaged Iroquois towns and destroyed crops while New York colonists remained passive. After the English and French made peace in 1697, the Iroquois, now abandoned by the English colonists, remained at war with New France until 1701. When a peace was agreed at Montreal between New France and a large number of Iroquois and other tribes. Hudson Bay Theatre. The war also served as a backdrop for an ongoing economic war between French and English interests in Arctic North America. The Hudson's Bay Company had established trading outposts on James Bay and the southern reaches of Hudson Bay by the early 1680s. In a series of raids, beginning with the so-called Hudson Bay Expedition, organized by Governor Denonville and continuing through the time of the 9 Years' War, most of these outposts, including Moose Factory, York Factory and Fort Albany, were taken by French raiders, primarily led by Pierre Le Moyne d'Iberville. But the French forces were small, and their hold on the captured posts quite weak. York Factory was recaptured by the English in 1695. In 1697, in the Battle of Hudson's Bay, one of the war's major naval battles, d'Iberville, with a single ship, defeated 3 English ships and went on to again capture York Factory. Aftermath. The Treaty of Ryswick, signed in September 1697, ended the war between the two colonial powers, reverting the colonial borders to the status quo ante bellum. The peace did not last long, and within 5 years, the colonies were embroiled in the next phase of the colonial wars, Queen Anne's War. After their settlement with France in 1701, the Iroquois remained neutral in that conflict. never taking part in active hostilities against either side. Tensions remained high between the English and the tribes of the Wabanaki Confederacy, who again fought with the French in Queen Anne's War, with conflict characterized by frequent raids in Massachusetts, including one on Groton in 1694, in which children were kidnapped, and the Deerfield Massacre in 1704, in which more than 100 captives were taken north to Montreal for ransom or adoption by Mohawk and French. By the end of the war, natives were successful in killing more than 700 English and capturing over 250 along the Acadia, New England border. The Ryswick Treaty was unsatisfactory to representatives of the Hudson's Bay Company, since most of its trading posts in Hudson Bay had been lost to the French before the war began. The rule of status quo antebellum meant that they remained under French control. The company recovered its territories at the negotiating table when the Treaty of Utrecht ended Queen Anne's War.